Obese people have higher risks for diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, and injuries in car accidents. Yes, in part because they're far less likely to wear a seat belt. That's the finding of a study out of the University of Buffalo that will be presented at an upcoming meeting of the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine in Chicago. The researchers analyzed data in the National Fatality Analysis Reporting System of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The study included 1/3 drivers involved in fatal crashes. 2 years ago, the research group found that morbidly obese people were 56% more likely to die in a car crash than normal weight car occupants. The new study revealed that drivers of normal weight are 67% more likely to wear a seat belt than are obese drivers, which could account for at least part of the increased death risk. The researchers hypothesized that overweight people find belts uncomfortable and difficult to buckle. A weight loss program can address the problem in the long run. An inexpensive seat belt extension can solve it today.
Okay, another ancient Greek philosopher we need to discuss is Aristotle's ethical theory. What Aristotle's ethical theory is all about is this: he's trying to show you how to be happy, what true happiness is. Now, why is he interested in human happiness? It's not just because it's something that all people want to aim for. It's more than that, but to get there we need to first make a very important distinction. Let me introduce a couple of technical terms: extrinsic value and intrinsic value. To understand Aristotle's interest in happiness, you need to understand this distinction. Some things we aim for and value, not for themselves but for what they bring about in addition to themselves. If I value something as means to something else, then it has what we will call extrinsic value.
One of the most amazing things that have happened even in my lifetime is the prediction of cosmology. When I started out 40-odd years ago, we thought we knew that the universe began a Big Bang. Some people doubted even then. We thought the universe was about 10 or 20 billion years old. But now, for really very sound scientific reasons, we can say that the universe did start in a Big Bang and it's 13.8 billion years old. So it's not 14, it's not 13 because a decimal point in there, and that's a stunning achievement to know that. And we also know that the laws of physics that apply to tiny particles inside atoms also explains what happened in the Big Bang. You can't have one without the other. A very neat example of this is that when you apply nuclear physics, that kind of physics, to understand how stars work, you find out that the oldest star in the universe is about 13 billion years old.
One of Guinness World Records' more unusual awards was presented at the National Maritime Museum yesterday. After a 100-day trial, the timepiece known as Clock B, which had been sealed in a clear plastic box to prevent tampering, was officially declared, by Guinness, to be the world's most accurate mechanical clock with a pendulum swinging in free air. It was an intriguing enough award. But what is really astonishing is that the clock was designed more than 250 years ago by a man who was derided at the time for an incoherence and absurdity that was little short of the symptoms of insanity, and whose plans for the clock lay ignored for 2 centuries. The derision was poured on John Harrison, the British clockmaker whose marine chronometers had revolutionized seafaring in the 18th century, and who was the subject of Longitude by Diva Sobel. His subsequent claim, that he would go on to make a pendulum timepiece that was accurate to within a second over a 100-day period, triggered widespread ridicule. The task was simply impossible, it was declared. But now the last laugh lies with Harrison. At a conference, Harrison decoded, towards a perfect pendulum clock, held at Greenwich yesterday, observatory scientists revealed that a clock that had been built to the clockmaker's exact specifications had run for 100 days during official tests and had lost only 5/8 of a second in that period. In a study in the current issue of the journal PLOS ONE, a team of scientists in Germany showed experts and novices simple geometric objects and simple chess positions and asked the subjects to identify them. Reaction times were measured and brain activity was monitored using functional MRI scans. On the identification of the geometric objects, the subjects performed the same, showing that the chess experts had no special visualization skills. When the subjects were shown the chess positions, the experts identified them faster. Focusing on an element of an earlier study on pattern and object recognition by chess experts, the researchers had expected to see parts of the left hemispheres of the experts' brains, which are involved in object recognition, react more quickly than those of the novices when they performed the chess tasks. But the reaction times were the same. What set the experts apart was that parts of their right brain hemispheres, which are more involved in pattern recognition, also lit up with activity. The experts were processing the information in 2 places at once. The researchers also found that when the subjects were shown the chess diagrams, the novices looked directly at the pieces to recognize them, while the experts looked on the middle of the boards and took everything in with the peripheral vision.
It might seem a little eccentric, but reviewing your work by reading it aloud can help to identify the woolliest areas. This works best if you perform your reading in a theatrical way, pausing at the commas and ends of sentences. If you run out of breath during a sentence, it is probably too long. You ought to be able to convert your writing into a speech in this way. If it sounds too stilted and convoluted, perhaps you could rework these parts until they sound fluid. It is unlikely that your reader will be fooled by the idea that long words make you sound clever. Cluttering a sentence with too many complicated words can prevent its meaning from being understood at all. A short word is always preferable to a long one. Why should anyone choose the word erroneous over the word wrong in an essay? Usually, writers who employ more obscure words are trying to sound impressive but can appear pretentious. Direct words enable you to control what you are saying, and are not necessarily babyish, but the most appropriate ones for the job. When you read your writing aloud, you will notice that the key stress comes at the end of your sentence. It is, therefore, most effective to end with a short and emphatic word to secure your point. Try to resist the impulse to waffle at the end of your sentence by trailing off into qualifying clauses. Ecology is the study of interactions of organisms among themselves and with their environment. It seeks to understand patterns in nature, e.g., the spatial and temporal distribution of organisms and the processes governing those patterns. Climatology is the study of the physical state of the atmosphere, its instantaneous state or weather, its seasonal to interannual variability, its long-term average condition or climate, and how climate changes over time. These two fields of scientific study are distinctly different. Ecology is a discipline within the biological sciences and has as its core the principle of natural selection. Climatology is a discipline within the geophysical sciences based on applied physics and fluid dynamics. Both, however, share a common history. The origin of these sciences is attributed to Aristotle and theorists and their books Meteorological and Inquiry into Plants, respectively, but their modern beginnings trace back to natural history and plant geography. 17th, 18th, and 19th century naturalists and geographers saw changes in vegetation as they explored new regions and laid the foundation for the development of ecology and climatology as they sought explanations for these geographic patterns. What is known as prior knowledge or pre-existing knowledge is the knowledge, skill or ability that a learner brings to a new learning encounter. This includes all knowledge that is available before the learning event, and which has been gathered or developed by any means, and in any situation, including both formal and, quite often, informal learning situations. Learners need enough previous knowledge and understanding to enable them to learn new things. They also need help making links with new and previous explicit knowledge. It is considered to be valuable to go through a process of what has been called activating prior knowledge. Teachers often go through this process at the beginning of a new topic. They also use introductory strategies at the beginning of lessons which are continuations from previous lessons. In terms of the practicalities of teaching, this is a process of making children think about the topic or remember what has been covered already. In terms of theory, it is to do with activating particular schemas. Research shows that when people work with a positive mindset, performance on nearly every level, productivity, creativity, engagement improves. Yet happiness is perhaps the most misunderstood driver of performance. For one, most people believe that success precedes happiness. Once I get a promotion, I'll be happy, they think. Or, once I hit my sales target, I'll feel great. But because success is a moving target, as soon as you hit your target, you raise it again, the happiness that results from success is fleeting. In fact, it works the other way around. People who cultivate a positive mindset perform better in the face of challenge. I call this the happiness advantage. Every business outcome shows improvement when the brain is positive. I've observed this effect in my role as a researcher and lecturer in 48 countries on the connection between employee happiness and success. And I'm not alone. In a meta-analysis of 225 academic studies, researchers Sonia Lyubomirsky, Laura King, and Ed Diener found strong evidence of directional causality between life satisfaction and successful business outcomes. Another common misconception is that our genetics, our environment, or a combination of the two determines how happy we are. To be sure, both factors have an impact. Banks provide short-term finance to companies in the form of an overdraft on a current account. The advantage of an overdraft is its flexibility. When the cash needs of the company increase with seasonal factors, the company can continue to write checks and watch the overdraft increase. When the goods and services are sold and cash begins to flow in, the company should be able to watch the overdraft decrease again. The most obvious example of a business which operates in this pattern is farming. The farmer uses the overdraft to finance the acquisition of seed for arable farming, or feed through the winter for stock farming, and to cover the period when the crops or animals are growing and maturing. The overdraft is reduced when the crops or the animals are sold. The main disadvantage of an overdraft is that it is repayable on demand. The farmer whose crop fails because of bad weather knows the problem of being unable to repay the overdraft. Having overdraft financing increases the worries of those who manage the company. The other disadvantage is that the interest payable on overdrafts is variable. When interest rates increase, the cost of the overdraft increases. Furthermore, for small companies there are often complaints that the rate of interest charged is high compared with that available to larger companies. The banks answer that the rates charged reflect relative risk, and it is their experience that small companies are more risky.
We can't see it, but brains hum with electrical activity. Brain waves created by the coordinated firing of huge collections of nerve cells pinball around the brain. The waves can ricochet from the front of the brain to the back, or from deep structures all the way to the scalp and then back again. Called neuronal oscillations, these signals are known to accompany certain mental states. Quiet alpha waves ripple soothingly across the brains of meditating monks. Beta waves rise and fall during intense conversational turns. Fast gamma waves accompany sharp insights. Sluggish delta rhythms lull deep sleepers, while dreamers shift into slightly quicker theta rhythms. Researchers have long argued over whether these waves have purposes, and what those purposes might be. Some scientists see waves as inevitable but useless byproducts of the signals that really matter, messages sent by individual nerve cells. Waves are simply a consequence of collective neural behavior, and nothing more, that view holds. But a growing body of evidence suggests just the opposite. Instead of byproducts of important signals, brain waves are key to how the brain operates, routing information among far-flung brain regions that need to work together. Mitz Miller is among the neuroscientists amassing evidence that waves are an essential part of how the brain operates.
In its periodic quest for culinary identity, Australia automatically looks to its indigenous ingredients, the foods that are native to this country. There can be little doubt that using an indigenous product must qualify a dish as Australian, notes Stephanie Alexander. Similarly, and without qualification, states that a uniquely Australian food culture can only be based upon foods indigenous to this country, although, as Kroll remarks, proposing Australian native foods as national symbols relies more upon their association with nature and geographic origin than on common usage. Notwithstanding the lack of justification for the premise that national dishes are, of necessity, founded on ingredients native to the country, after all, Italy's gastronomic identity is tied to the non-indigenous tomato, Thailand's to the non-indigenous chili. The reality is that Australians do not eat indigenous foods in significant quantities. The exceptions are fish, crustaceans and shellfish from oceans, rivers and lakes, most of which are unarguably unique to this country. Despite valiant and well-intentioned efforts today at promoting and encouraging the consumption of native resources, bush foods are not harvested or produced in sufficient quantities for them to be a standard component of Australian diets, nor are they generally accessible.
Tissue engineering, what is it? It's an emerging field, interdisciplinary field that combines engineering and life sciences to create functional biological structures that can restore and improve tissue function. Examples include bladders, trachea, blood vessels, and if you look at it, printing as a technology has also gone through the revolution, and well, it's been around for hundreds of years. In the last couple of decades, it's been a new dimension. We can now print layer by layer in materials ranging from plastic to metal, to concrete, to chocolate, from the smallest scales to the largest. If you take 3D printing and we combine it with biology, we have bioprinting, where the building blocks are cell aggregates where we call bio-link particles that are composed of thousands of cells that can fuse together into different shapes. These geometries can include multi-layered sheets, such as skin, branching tubes for vasculature, and the sophistication of this manufacturing technology improves daily to include different cell types and different shapes. And now why is it important? The pharmaceutical industry at the moment is in a moment of crisis. It spends more money each year on R&D, but has fewer drugs to show for it. It takes more than a decade, more than $1 billion to develop a new drug, and the cost of a failure can be measured in hundreds of millions of dollars.